We're live.
Okay, it's December 27th, 2023, 7:10 PM. We stand for the planning board meeting. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before we get started, I just want to apologize for being 10 minutes late, but we had an attorney-client privilege meeting for the record before we got started, so. First on our agenda is the Evergreen Estates subdivision public hearing, which is still open. Is there anybody in the audience would like to make any comments? Chris, anybody on Zoom?
Nobody's on Zoom now.
Okay. Going forward, we have the major subdivision application on Thomas Reed Hidden Valley Road. Continuation of public hearing for the discussion on road and lots.
Good evening, Matt Huntington with Studio Audio here on behalf of the applicant, Tom Reed, and Brent Reed is here as well. So what we just passed out, since our last meeting, the applicant has kind of narrowed down on the proposed road width that they are shooting for, which is 11-foot lanes and 2-foot shoulders. What that does is it allows a 26-foot clear width, which allows for the fire code approval essentially. Even though the fire code does mention roads need to be exclusive of shoulders, they also give provisions in there with the local department, the local code official, whether that be Warren County or the town's fire chief, can offer deviations from that. So our understanding, based on dealing with Warren County and other towns, is they'll allow you to include the shoulders to meet that 26-foot width. So what we've done is provided 11-foot lanes. And since then, we have been perusing in depth through the town subdivision code. We feel there's a few sections in there that grant the planning board the ability to offer waivers on things like road width. And on that, we'd like to get some feedback from the board or the town attorney on their interpretation of those sections of the town code and whether or not that's something that can be feasible. Additionally, Brent went out and measured quite a few of the existing roads in town. And a lot of subdivisions that have been approved prior were approved and built with roads less than 28 feet in width. So that leads us to believe there was some mechanism of approval because a hardship variance wasn't applied for in these cases. So there must have been something done at the planning board or town board level that allowed a deviation from this. In section 5 of the code, there's some language about the character of the neighborhood, basically, with the roadway width and the subdivision development in general. So you'll note on the first sheet that I passed out, which is on C 1.1, Hidden Valley Road currently pavement to pavement is 20 feet in width. And that's really the only road to look at within the neighborhood in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. So we're proposing 11 feet to stay somewhat close to that, give a little bit more. Additionally, you know, the DEC gives a lot of recommendations, and they have for years in their stormwater manual about, you know, attempting to reduce road widths and you know, granting or encouraging the town planning boards to apply waivers to standard road widths that are in excess of, you know, what's really required to move vehicle traffic through in terms of a safety and vehicle movement perspective. And with 9 lots here, you know, I mean, the reality of it is the 22-foot roadway is more than ample. However, it just comes down to what the mechanism within the town to try to pursue that approval is. So I guess with that, I'll leave it up to questions or maybe some feedback from the town attorney on any research that has happened on our request here for roadway width.
So as far as I know, we have our subdivision regulations. I haven't heard anything different from the attorney. So if you want questions to her about us, I mean, unless it's a hardship, which at this point, I don't see a hardship.
Well.
I mean, the town would have to change stuff, but you know, we can't change the regulations ourselves unless there's a hardship.
Well, if you look at your section 8.5 is one of them.
You could, excuse me, could you just address it to the attorney? 'Cause
No,
I
sorry.
think-
No, yeah, section 8.5 of the town code, I'm trying to pull up my phone here. A lot of it's loosely written, so I mean, I think the interpretation can go down to, you know, however it ends up being interpreted. So 8.5 is conditions to waivers or modifications of improvements. Essentially says in granting waivers or modifications, the planning board may require such reasonable conditions as will in its judgment secure substantially the objectives of the standards or requirements so waived or modified. So our interpretation of that is, you know, the standard set a 28-foot roadway for whatever reason. Nobody's really sure of that. So if we step back and look at roadway width, what's the point of it? It's to get emergency access in there. It's to allow vehicles to pass, pedestrians to pass, etc. So we feel that that can be done with a 22-foot roadway, the same as it can be done with a 28-foot roadway in this current subdivision that we're proposing. So we feel that meets the reasonable conditions of securing substantially the objectives of the standards. We think that's a substantial security matching the standards of the 28-foot roadway width that can all be accomplished with 22 feet. So I guess that's where it kind of comes down to the attorney's interpretation of that section, whether that can be applied here. Because that's not under the hardship, that's not under the variance section, it's specifically under the conditions to waivers or modifications section.
Yeah, I guess my first question is you're supposed to submit a preliminary plat. And
Yes,
this is changed, I don't know how many times, after the public hearing has been opened. So the public hearing was opened based on the first thing you submitted.
yes,
It's now been changed.
yes.
So technically, this board should start from scratch, open a new public hearing based on what you're submitting. But then is it gonna change again?
Well, as far as I know, it's not, but as you know, we're taking direction. I think the applicant probably answered that better than I can in terms of any potential changes, but as far as I know, we're pretty well locked in here. I thought we submitted a plat for this revised layout at one point within the past few
We
months.
have an original one, which was 24 feet. We
Yep.
had a revised one with a hammerhead of 24
Yes.
feet. Then we had a revised one with a cul-de-sac. And now we have a new revision of a 22-foot instead of 24-foot.
Understood. So the preliminary plat, we don't usually include, I mean, the plat itself doesn't usually include the road width. It's just property lines and meets and bounds. So I don't know if that's necessarily affected by the road width because the right of ways were made the same regardless of the road width this entire time.
So the subdivision regulations say the board should take particular consideration of the roads. Particular attention shall be given to the design of the streets. And that's preliminary plat. So I feel like at the most basic level, the board hasn't had a chance to really review what you're submitting.
Okay. I guess so you're saying essentially just wash everything, resubmit a preliminary plat based on what you have in front of you now?
I think that the applicant needs to decide what their final design is so that the board can make a determination based on what they're going to be finally given. Because I believe at the town board meeting, 20-foot roads were discussed.
Yeah, it was a lot of numbers were tossed around. So the latest direction I have is the 11-foot and 2-foot. I don't know, are we
Yeah.
locked into that now?
Just because there were a couple of things why he wanted to do that. First of all, when I was looking at those roads, a lot of them, the most recent roads that you guys have approved, well, first of all, who's been on this board the longest?
I have,
So how far back does that go?
I've never had a major subdivision,
Right, so like,
so,
I would like.
sorry,
looking at
about
the
17 years.
most recent one was 2004 that I saw, so I'm like, it's quite possible none of them were even here for that, so I was trying to think how they could have gotten to 22, right? And there was like one in 2004, you had Shaver Brook Lane, Hudson Heights, Those were 2004 that got approved at 22. And I even have like Karen showed me a way to go on the county and see the specs. There's even the drawings and everything there for 22, so it got approved at that. And there's several others, going back to 1991. We have Highland Estates, Barrows, which is Daniels Road. Several that were at 22. So it seemed like that was a number that was something that could work. And it also matched up when we started looking at things with stormwater. We looked at the latest design standards for stormwater, and actually there's a little chart, the DEC stormwater guide, that has 9-foot lanes, 2-foot shoulders. So if you paved all that, that'd be 11 on each side, which would be 22. So it's like the numbers just started lining up for a lot of different things. So it seemed like maybe a good number to use. That made sense in a lot of ways. When you started talking about fire code, if the shoulders could be 3 foot of gravel, it got to the 26 foot that was needed. So it looked like something that was done in the past that made sense. Like at the other board meeting, they were trying to make it sound like we were trying to change things because something was wrong from the past, and it's not that. The standards make sense. It's just how they're being applied. We're trying to think through how they could have been applied and had it work at 22. So it's either you followed 5.1 and 5.2 and came up with something. So like, are you guys just looking at the chart and 5.22 and saying 28 feet, that's what it's got to be? Or are you actually looking at 5.1 and 5.21 and trying to come up with something first before you can get to that chart? Because in 5.21 general planning standards, it says the arrangement, character, extent, width, grade, and location of all streets shall conform to the official map and master plan. So in your master plan, the comprehensive plan, there talks about stormwater. And again, that's where the chart said 9 and 2, which is 11 feet each side, comes out to 22. And in section B of that, it says, provide for the continuation of appropriate projection of existing principal streets. That's kind of like what Matt was talking about with Hidden Valley Road. You're kind of the continuation of that would be 20, and we're actually going above that with 22. So if you look at those 5.21 standards, as well as your chart, so like if we look at 5.21 for this, it's like 22 would seem reasonable. Then you look at the chart and it says 28. You kind of have two different numbers, but in section 5.1 in the design standards, it says you should basically take the minimum.
So you're willing to have an HOA? Because the town,
That has nothing to do with HOA.
sure it does. They won't take care of they won't take over the roads unless it's 24 foot.
No, I'm gonna jump in here,
Oh,
even
yeah.
if you have an HOA. 5.22 says design standards for all streets shall. So in my world, shall means must legally. So
But did you read 5.1?
I did,
That basically says you take the minimum out of 5.21 and 5.22.
okay, but 5.22 says 28 feet for the road that you're suggesting.
And it's at 28 feet for all those roads that I just talked about that came out to 22.
I understand. But it doesn't matter what happened in the past, that's irrelevant.
Well, they're setting precedent.
They're
for
not.
What's happening
They're
now.
not.
And again, I think they did it right, whereas you guys are just looking at 5.22. Why is 5.21 there if it doesn't do anything?
No.
Yeah, that makes no sense. So like what I'm saying makes sense. And that's all I was trying to do. Well, seriously, why is 5.21 there if you don't use it?
I don't know. My legal opinion is your requirements say it has to be 28 feet. They have to meet the hardship, and it's up to this board to decide whether or not you want to grant them that hardship or not.
You don't think there's an avenue around the hardship with the 8.5? I just say that because other towns that we work in quite a bit, usually there's some mechanism for the planning board. To either, approve or deny roadway widths that are proposed or roadway slopes or anything like that, that's proposed outside of what the standards are. And it seems that 8.5 is similar to the mechanism that's established in a lot of other municipalities that we work in.
Yeah, I would agree with that if it wasn't for The standard on page 73.
Is that the table on 73? Here.
It's a hardship. I mean, I feel like we've discussed this ad nauseum, so I think at this point, the decision just needs to be made.
So you don't think you should take into consider anything that happened in the past with the people who created these subdivision regulations? And you think 5.21 just doesn't get it,
I think you need to follow the chart in 5.22.
then ignore 5.21?
Mhm.
Okay. And I think when you update your regs that have been there since 67.
You're
Maybe.
talking to the wrong board about that.
And again, when I measured all the roads since 1967, there hasn't been one road that's 28 feet wide. Not one, since 1967 when the subdivision break line.
Well, we're following our lawyer's advice, but I just wanted to point out, when you went in front of the town board, which has nothing to do with us, Ronnie said he would not take over the road unless it was 24 feet.
Right.
Absolutely. So, and now you're going to 22 or whatever. I'm just telling you what he said. It has nothing to do with us.
Well, maybe if he heard this conversation, he might change.
Well, I don't know. Could
He
be.
might
I
not,
don't know.
but
That was his speaking. That wasn't, and he wasn't even looking at this, whatever. That's just, but we have to go by the regulations. And I can't change the regulations, it's
well, 5.21 is 20-year regulation.
If he's willing.
through advice for a lawyer, we're following her advice.
Okay, so just to clarify, just so we're not spinning wheels next, it's either 28 feet or somehow, we're obviously not gonna prove a hardship on 28 feet. I don't think that's even feasible. So it sounds like we're kind of down to 28 feet. Is that that's where we're going?
Well, so there are a lot of moving pieces happening right now, which I think is part of the fact that you've submitted many different plans.
Understood.
So this board needs to decide whether or not they're going to approve the preliminary plat. And I do want to point out that on page 26, you can approve it with a modification. This board can make a modification if they have to follow. Now, that being said, you've also asked the town board to change the subdivision regulations. You've also asked the town board two things, right? Change the subdivision regulations. Oh, and to take over ownership of the road. So the town board has now asked this board for a recommendation on whether or not they should change the subdivision regulations. So now we have three different moving pieces as part of the fact that.
Could I add a fourth to that possibly? And just for sake of discussion, it'd help to bring a resolve if you were to agree to set up an HOA as part of a compromise, to come to terms with a number with the town, with that understanding that you would have an HOA.
I actually have a question about that. With the HOAs or if it's a private road, do these subdivision regs supposedly apply? Because there's dirt roads all over the place in town. These subdivision regs supposedly apply to all roads.
Correct.
Okay,
What's your thought of an HOA?
I have no thoughts on an HOA. I'm just here to share on the 22-foot paved road idea.
I guess we'll have to circle back with Tom on that one, but I understand you're saying setting up an HOA may strike, no. it
Yeah,
does.
that's-
That's a long
that's
story to
that
count.
That just takes away the ownership of the road by
Yeah,
the
yeah,
town.
okay.
It just removes one of the
Yeah.
4 open pieces. So I honestly don't know where you go at this point.
So if we as a board determine that there's a hardship, we could potentially approve.
It has to be on those specific hardship things in the regulations.
So I think if you read through the hardships and you can find a hardship there that we can agree on, I don't know that it's impossible for us to approve. I think in general, we tend to agree with you. What
Yeah.
you're saying makes sense. We're being advised that we can't do it as a board. So you guys need to give us a reason that we can do it.
Yeah,
And I don't know that you've done that yet.
Based
You know
on
I
what
mean?
you
Based on
submitted
Not having a hardship.
originally,
If
correct?
you look at 4.65, that's not a hardship.
So 8.11. Do you have your book?
Yeah, we're looking at it.
I got it.
So they would have to show unusual hardship or extraordinary difficulties because of exceptional and unique conditions of the topography, access, location, shape, size, drainage, or other physical features of the site. The minimum requirements may be modified to mitigate that hardship. So public interest is protected and development is in keeping with the general spirit and intent of regulations. So if you can give them any reason as to why 28 feet would fit into, going less than 28 feet would fit into any of those issues.
Yeah, I equate that to somewhere like when you're trying to get a use variance, right? So is it gonna be reviewed in a similar fashion of that with the hardship?
I don't think it's that hard.
You don't think so? Okay. Yeah, I mean, we certainly can study that a little bit, I guess, and.
We do have a subdivision that's gonna follow the 28 feet right now. That's probably gonna, they'll be open before you guys are.
Yeah, certainly.
They don't have a problem with the 28 feet.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I haven't really been advising you guys to look at. the
Sure, it's gonna
hardship
get by
options,
EDC though. I mean, it's getting by you, but with the stormwater regs, is that gonna make it past EDC at 28 feet?
I don't know. I mean, they're just waiting on them to get back to them, so I couldn't answer that question. But at this point, they haven't come and said they need to change it,
Because
To
EDC
24
works at
is
22 feet for this type of road.
They're just doing modification to it.
in the
It
stormwater
was
regs,
approved by
yeah.
EDC by
Okay, so-
20 feet.
Seen it.
well, we kind of go by this.
It's in this because in 5.21, it says refer to your comprehensive plan. Your comprehensive plan says you're looking into stormwater regs. Technically, it is.
And that's another thing, our comprehensive plan might, now that we've got a grant to, for our zoning regulations, that could change down the road too, but as of right now, that's what the book says,
That's what I'm saying, it's what your comprehensive plan says.
It's 28 feet of asphalt, not
Paved road,
24
right.
and 2 and 2.
It's 28 feet of paved
I mean,
road.
and this is a stretch. The uniqueness of that area of Lake Luzerne, given the size of Hidden Valley Road, is approving a small road more in line with the aesthetics of that area.
Surrounding community.
The surrounding
not
community,
right.
that's the only thing I can come up with.
That's what 5.1 says, basically.
It's kind of the character of the
The
neighborhood.
character of the neighborhood, that's where. I guess that's for. I don't know, besides what it is.
Or 24 and 2 and 2.
Again,
The main road in that neighborhood is 20 feet wide. So I guess. it
in
can be
that,
character of the road.
in that section 5, Article 5, design features. Even though that 5.21 is there and people are interpreting it as in different ways. When you get to that 5.22, which is still part of 5. Mary is right that it says design standards for all streets shall be in accordance with the following table. And shall means shall. It doesn't say maybe. It doesn't give you an option. It says shall be. Shall be means it must meet those regulations.
It does, except for what it said in 5.1. So when I'm reading 5.1, I mean, you're saying, I think I should be able to say this too, since you're reading something. I just want to read something. 5.1 says the following planning and design standards shall be complied with, and no higher standard may be required by the planning board. So when I read that,
Huh?
no
She said-
higher
I
standard
remember what it was.
should be applied higher than 5.21. So if 5.22 is higher than 5.21, they use 5.21.
That's how you're interpreting it. How, and again, I don't get a vote in this, so it's kind of senseless for me to be speaking really, but to me, that 5.1 means that if in particular, this cul-de-sac, it says 28 feet, they can't require you to make it 30 feet. That's how I interpret that.
Mary, what is the definition of marginal access? That's
It's in your definition, I believe. I believe it's a street that is parallel to a main artery.
Okay.
Parallel to the case.
Right.
It's in your definitions in your subdivision book.
And not many roads. None of the ones that I said are 22.
All right, I feel like we're just spinning our wheels. What does this board want to do? How do you want to move this forward?
Page 15. Page 15, Tony.
Page 15.
Or not moving forward?
Well, in my opinion, I'm just one member and I happen to be the chairman. I'm following your advice and we have to wait until,
Well, you don't have to.
well,
You can approve it with your own modifications. You can disapprove it. Or you can approve it and hope no one challenges it.
that's the part that,
That's where you come from.
right.
Well, I'm telling you, someone could challenge it and win, but I don't make the ultimate decision here.
And the
I've
original,
also given the applicant a way to present it to the board in a way that you could approve it.
well, we'll go down each board
So-
member for any opinions or.
Can I ask a question, John?
Sure.
So what you're saying is we can approve it hypothetically. I don't want to say this.
Just say it.
Could we approve it based on what the county requires right now?
Yes.
And then if somebody challenges it down the road, that's a totally separate issue, but we could approve it based on that.
Could approve it based on that. You could put the modification on it and approve it. If someone were to bring an Article 78, they would win.
Okay.
That is not necessarily this board's problem. That would be the developer's
That
problem.
would be the applicant's.
Could we approve it based on what our highway superintendent is suggesting he would be willing to?
If you're going to do that, I suggest you get his requirements before you
In
approve
writing.
it and put those as conditions on the approval.
Okay.
I wouldn't just leave it up to his discretion to make it the time that he talks to them.
Okay,
So just going back to what you said, you're telling us the legal burden would fall on the applicant if there was a court case.
What I'm saying is you would be named as a defendant as well as the applicant. And then it would be this board's decision, whether you cared whether or not that decision is overturned. There are towns that'll make a decision, it will be challenged and the burden will fall on the applicant to defend it because it's their property that they're developing. But you will be named as a defendant.
would you be willing to change to what the town is willing to accept as the standard in order for the town to take over the road? If
I think so, but I'd have to check back with Tom on that. I guess you're referring to the 28 feet or any of the 24 or whatever the town.
Or 2 foot on each side,
I can't say 100% without Tom here. I
Because
can check back with my client.
that was what was,
I could certainly present it
suggested.
to him as it's,
so if you want the town to take over this road,
yeah,
we would want to make sure that we align with what the town wants
Mhm.
the road to be, for them to plow it safely.
yeah.
I don't, but please just keep in mind that taking over the road is a town board decision.
Right.
So
Yeah.
even if you make it 24, the
sure.
town board could decide different.
I mean, our initial feedback on that, I was at one meeting before we even got this far with the 12-foot rows and it seemed, they were amenable to that.
Nah, 24, he said.
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
20.
Not 20, whatever you're presenting tonight, which is different than.
No, I'm not. Yeah, for clarity, I'm not saying.
And it was paved. There was no shoulder or nothing. It was all paved, 24 foot of paved.
Yes,
Because its plows are like
Yeah, they were-
11.6 or
2
something.
foot of shoulder.
yeah, that was the meeting that I was at the town board, so it seemed like that was potentially feasible. So I guess,
And that's a town board decision. So they might just say, no, 28 feet, Then you're back to HOA.
No,
But
no.
it still has to meet the design requirements in here, even with an HOA.
I mean, if we approve 24 feet,
Right, and the town board doesn't like it, sorry.
Yeah. then you're still gonna have to do 24 feet and and then it would be an HOA.
Or
I mean,
That's what I meant.
Like I said, I mean, right now, my understanding is we're just trying to look for some path forward, and whether the path forward is no to all, but it has to be 28 feet. That would help us refer back to the client, that's it, so we don't have to sit in here and discuss road lifts anymore, or. If there's an avenue that we can pursue, if you don't like 11 feet, but you're okay with 12, the town thinks they'll take 12, we certainly don't mind proposing that as well either.
So
It's just, we're kind of in limbo between two areas here, on which way we're going.
So we have the option of the 28 foot we have the option of the 22 foot you just proposed, but you would have to resubmit and we'd have to start all over again with that.
No, you could
Right.
take that as a modification.
We can take it as a modification, okay? Or we have the option of the 24 foot. That is what's on the table right now.
They got 22 now.
Well,
So
with,
you-
with not accepting the modification, it's 24 foot.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Because we don't have to start all over again, like you said.
Yeah.
We don't have to start all over again.
If we approve something with a modification and then down the road, within the next month or two, the town board adjusts the regulations, can this still be challenged?
Yes, it's the law at the time it was passed.
Okay.
I do just want to point out, because I just feel like this has gotten very confusing. So we're still at the preliminary plat process. So you would approve the you could not approve it, you could deny it. You could approve it as submitted today, which is the 22 feet. You could approve it with your own modifications. And then that would be the preliminary plat that was approved. Then they have to come back here again with a final plat. And at that point, they're gonna have to have, I believe you guys have to do the realty subdivision, so they'd have to have that approval at that point. I think DOT and DEC too. at that
DOT,
point.
Hidden Valley's not a state road, so there's no
Okay.
DOT. DEC, that's the NOI. I mean, we can almost submit that at any point, really, use the state. It's been done by the time it should be there.
Okay.
So really the big ones are really subdivision.
So even when you approve this preliminary plat, there's still gonna be a lot more review for them to go through, and they have to come back here again for a final plat approval.
I honestly don't have a problem approving it with modification of the 24 foot
I don't know.
and 2 foot of gravel. I honestly don't have a problem approving it that. I don't know what anybody else's feeling is on.
Can I ask you guys a question? Are you willing to risk the Article 76?
Well, I'm not really the one risking it, so I would have to ask Tom on that.
Yeah, so. if
Would that
this-
pertain to these other ones that got 22 also? Like,
No, so when a planning board approves, when a planning board makes a decision, a final decision. Anybody in the town of Lake Luzerne can challenge their decision. They have 30 days to do so.
Okay.
That means they file a lawsuit basically in Supreme Court. And they would have to name the planning board as the body that made that decision, but they'd also have to name the applicant who asked them to make that decision. We have towns that'll make a decision knowing that they're going to be subject to an Article 78, and then they'll step back and say, yeah, we're a defendant, but we don't really care how this turns out. And they leave the burden on the applicant. So it's really, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that this board cares if their decision would be overturned. It would kind of be on you guys whether or not you defended it so you could develop it the way that they approved it.
Well, you said the board has a choice of whether they want to help defend the decision. The board's the one made the decision, so I would hope they would defend it.
No? Why would they spend legal fees on something that benefits you?
But, so people could sue no matter what, whether it was under the 28 or not. They could bring this Article 72, 78 lawsuit no matter what.
Within 30 days,
Correct.
then it's moot.
Correct.
And a defense would be 5.21.
That would be up to your attorney. I think the only defense would be 8.12 or 8.11, but.
Maybe you guys feel.
I would, with the 24 and the 2 on each side, that you talked about, Ron Dual describing and saying that that would be a standard. Because of all this ambiguity that's gone on in the past and not understanding why there's all these different road widths, I think it would be prudent to have something put in place by either us or the town, you know, with Ron's recommendations so that it's just not a subjective thing. It could pass muster going forward into the future with other subdivisions. So, you know, there's got to be some validity to that. There's got to be a process there, Mayor, right? With like taking what he's suggesting, or like, what's that process to do that so that it's a standard, it becomes a standard.
The only way to do that is have the town board change the subdivision regulations. I do also want to mention you have a subdivision application in front of you right now with 28 feet roads.
Mhm.
They could then take exception to you approving this for less. They could bring a challenge, or they could come back in front of you with roads less than 28 feet. And at that point, you have set a precedence.
Well, they chose the 28 feet, right? And fourth of that.
I don't,
No,
They
that's what the
designed-
regulation was. If you just followed it because they knew it was a
If you didn't
regulation.
follow the chart,
Right.
I know.
On their plans, they actually put what our regulation minimums were and then listed what they had designed it to make sure that they matched or were better than what we
Yeah, they
required.
go by the chart.
Can I be frank with you? I'm willing to make a motion for the 24-foot road with the 2-foot shoulders. The town's never gonna fight with you if it gets challenged. So do you want to take the risk that it's gonna get challenged?
I don't know, you have to talk to my father about that one.
Okay, so would it make more sense to give this a little bit more time, not make any decision right now?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'd like to be able to go back to the applicant with, here's option A, B, or C. You know, option A, just comply. Option B, is there potential for 12-foot lanes, 2-foot shoulders? Option C, if there is potential, is he willing to risk having to spend attorney fees on our subject?
Because there's a lot of, like she said, there's a lot of moving parts right now.
Yes,
That
and
time is
we
gonna,
could probably attempt.
In fact, they asked us already to give our take. Well,
Yeah.
we haven't been able to do that because you came in front of us with a smaller road now than was before. So
time might resolve a couple of the issues that you guys are looking at right now. So if you're, I would make a recommendation for you guys to just give it another month. Okay.
I would
Hayden
get
Putty
those
is option D, yeah.
answered though in the meantime.
Yeah,
but-
certainly. So I mean, we have a linear path here.
I mean, are you guys reassessing the 28-foot standard by any chance? I mean, is that possible? I mean, just thinking of it common sense wise, does that?
I think they're telling you to wait the month.
Wait a
There's
month.
a reason.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that is good to know. I guess just on clarity, one more question for Mary on the hardship. Do you feel that language under the hardship though is enough for us to even attempt to present anything? Cause it seems pretty substantial. In order to do that for a few feet of pavement, I don't know, you know, how.
I have seen it work in other towns.
Okay,
Not with roads per se. I've seen it with septics, which I think is harder actually.
yeah,
So, I mean, I don't know, I believe you and I have spoken about some other towns that you've worked with.
yeah,
If you call them, they might be able to give you some pointers.
okay.
I mean, if you can present a hardship, even just an argument for it, this board then has a reason that they relied on that.
Yeah.
And that is defensible in court.
Okay. You can see why I'm a little gun shy though, because usually a hardship goes in like
Yes.
a experience and that's okay.
Especially if they wanted to go to a 22-foot road.
I wouldn't.
Yeah. It's hard.
I mean, it's up to you, but your highway superintendent said that's not something he's willing to consider.
For an HOA. it would be.
It doesn't matter if it's an HOA.
No, I meant
we still have to approve it though.
if the hardship was for an HOA 22-foot, that would only be the way. The 22-foot road would be passed through a hardship because the town won't take it over.
Right. The
I
town,
mean, the reality of it is even when there is a HOAs, the town ends up taking them over at some point. Because HOAs dissolve, they go away, they don't take care of them, the town ends up with that road.
All right, so I guess to summarize, we'll get some questions answered and maybe pull for a month, come back in February. Right. Everything? Okay, thank you. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
And have a happy new year.
Thank you.
Next, we have acceptance of the minutes. Everybody get the minutes from
I didn't get it. I'll get it tomorrow. It's fine.
November 29th, right? October 25th, sorry, I got the wrong.
It's October's that you gave them?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second. Howard seconded.
Roll call vote then?
Sure.
Kyle?
I believe I have to abstain.
No.
You don't have to, no, not even.
Yes.
Yes.
Scott? Yes.
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Dane?
Yes.
Hearing none, the motion is carried.
It doesn't
Um,
matter if you're at the meeting or not, you can still vote on the minutes now.
We got all the new business. I would just like, before we get into that, based on what we just heard, it sounds like we need to do maybe a recommendation or do something before our next meeting, so the board gets their stuff. I don't know.
Well, when you said for the month, I think that's what,
Sounds like they want us to decide in a month, and then if we're gonna wait till February to even think about it.
I don't think the town board,
Well, no,
I didn't think they had any time.
oh, okay.
I mean, I don't know, do you guys, you've been forming an opinion, do you have any opinions? I mean, what do you?
Well, good at 24 feet.
Thing of it is, if we make a motion next month and there's nothing to suggest.
I did.
I strongly feel that something should be written,
Right.
you all make a motion on. So I don't think you should make any motions or any final decisions tonight, and I understand that we'll postpone this until March. But I think it's safer to have something written before you all make a motion to decide on something final.
So can, I ask? Well, I'll start with Kyle. Do you have any, we'll just go, I mean, I'll start with myself. I don't feel comfortable making any decision on this. It's just, they've been going back and forth and back and forth. We're requiring 28 feet from another development, and they understand we want development in this area. I guess I'm just a stickler for the law, following the rules and regulations. I remember, Dane, when you went through it, we followed the regulations. Your business opened, that was good, everything, you did everything we asked.
Mhm.
We didn't switch, change anything, it was good. And I know this regulation might be outdated or whatever, but I just think just to say, okay, let's do it. I don't feel comfortable, but that's just my vote. I like the theory about what you said about New York, the county, you know, if the county says 26, that's whatever the county might, the fire department. Is that what it was, Karen, that, the regulations, the fire regulations?
It's it's the fire
Fire
apparatus,
apparatus.
road access.
If we go 24, fine in the end. I just think we ought to just think about it. But I'm just one member, so. Does anybody have an opinion?
Yeah.
Well, let's start with Kyle.
Well-
Yes.
We have a lot of
Do you have an
opinions,
opinion?
John.
Yeah, I guess so. I really don't feel comfortable going against what Ronnie's asking for.
Which is 24 feet minimum.
With 2-foot shoulders.
And it's because of the plows. If the plows are
That's-
11 feet.
You
then
got 11.6, so that, yeah.
We want to have be safe plowing. There's no doubt about that.
And if we went with the fire apparatus standards, we would meet what Ronnie's looking for.
Right.
Oh,
20
absolutely,
to
right.
26 feet.
And he was definitely not, he was against anything under 24. He said, no way, because it would just wouldn't be.
I agree with what Dane suggested earlier. I think long range, we're trying to develop our community. We're trying to have, I mean, John, it just speaks to the fact that you've been on the planning board for how many years and you've never had a subdivision. And so now
Right.
we've got like a few. And so at least 2, right?
2 or maybe more in the way, hopefully.
Yeah. So I think that's progress. I think that's forward thinking. And I would hate to deter that movement in our community by something like this. I know it's super important, but I think to make a good decision now and then it's done and I like what Ronnie has said, he's our highway superintendent, so he's got a lot of validity with this decision. And then the fire code with the county. I mean, again, I think it's going on something that has been given a lot of thought and acknowledgement and protection in developing communities. So I don't know where 28 came from. I don't know if anybody really does.
We've been trying to figure that out.
So and because of that factor as well, something realistic and something that's going to be livable by developers, I think, in our community, because I think that's the direction we want to head in, right? We don't want to deter growth in our community. And I think that probably needs to be changed. So those are just my feelings about it.
Personally, I think, and I don't want to zoom this out too much, but the process of doing anything in New York State is so burdensome at this point. If I can do anything to reduce that, then I will. And I think I'm for allowing this development to come in with modifications if they're willing to take on legal risk, and I'd like to see the town standard change. It's just continuing delay. And I just don't think it's good for us as a community or New York State as the population continues to flee the different parts of the country.
So would you be okay with the fire apparatus road access standard that everyone's talking about?
That would be perfect.
So that may be something we could put in writing as far as the recommendation to the town board. And you're like that too, I think. right?
Yes, I think we should make the recommendation because the longer we delay it, the longer these developments are going to be put out. So if we make that recommendation, then the town has a chance to look at it and get back to us for this and the future subdivisions. 28 foot is just the amount of money that's gonna be wasted on asphalt. It's absolutely ridiculous to put that wide of a road in. And it's gonna come right out of the community.
And it might be 26. That might be what the fire apparatus recommendation is. So they might
Yeah,
have
I
to
think
go
what
26. It might be
the
20.
price point of the houses and the lots going in, we want them affordable for people in our area, in our community. And to have a 28-foot road. She's gonna increase it so much. So I don't have a problem making a recommendation tonight.
To the town board. Howard?
You know, we've spent a fair amount of time on this. I know Dane has probably invested more time than any one of us. At the same time, we want to be able to take into account, are we going to make a long-term decision that we could all live with 2, 5, and 10, and 8 years from now? At the same time, let's take into account what the town board is asking us. And, you know, even though I'm doing the planning board, I've had the impression that there have been some times where the town board has asked the opinion of the planning board or the zoning board, and they may or may not take it into account. So if we are gonna all be on the same page with saying, okay, 24 feet is something that we've considered and something we've come to terms on, then we want to be able to articulate that to the town board in a way so that they really take into account our recommendation.
Because they might change the law itself. I mean, they're the ones that are going to change the law.
They could, and yet I get the impression more and more as we've been going through this process that they're putting a fair amount of weight onto the opinion that we offer to them.
Right.
And making the change so we don't have to do this in the future. It'll already be done.
I would agree with a lot of what you guys said. I do agree with Howard that the town board is giving more weight to what the planning board is recommending. And while I understand where, John, where you're coming from with really wanting to, you know, be thorough and take your time with it, the other side of that, and as somebody who's kind of gone through this process, is it can get burdensome to go through the amount of meetings and have to wait a month between each one and everything like that. And based on what you guys have said, I think there's a pretty good consensus that everybody thinks the 28 feet is kind of outlandish. And as I said earlier, I think adopting the county fire apparatus standards would kind of just solve a lot of problems. And streamline the process. So, Mary, can I make a motion to adopt those? And then we can write something out.
Just trying.
I just want to step in with something before you make a final decision. If you look at this chart on page 46, major arterial and primary, it's set, and we're just talking about minimum pavement width. We're not looking at any of the other aspects of this chart. Minimum pavement width, the major arterial and primary as determined by state or county road authorities, which would be probably DOT standards is probably what they use. Okay. Collector or secondary, they've got a 36-foot wide road there. If you put 24, you're cutting that by 12 feet. That's a lot. So the rest are minor, marginal, cul-de-sacs and alleys. If you make it 24, I think you're more in line with making it the same as when I talked with Charles Wallace, head of the Warren County Building Codes, he said that every road is basically considered a fire apparatus road. So if you go to that table that was on the chart for fire apparatus roads without a hydrant, they don't have any less than 20 feet. So we've got alleys in here at 18 feet. So even our alleys would change, if you make it worded that it meets the same as the New York State Fire Code, fire apparatus road requirements that are in place at the time of the submittal of the subdivision, because this is going to change over the years. It changed from 2015 to 2020 in the New York State Code. So I think we need to be specific that all we're looking at is the minimum pavement width section of this table, not this whole table isn't going to go away. Just that one section we would modify. I'm thinking the last 4 columns, minor, marginal, cul-de-sacs and alleys to meet the fire apparatus road requirements, because I question that 36-foot wide collector or secondary. Let me see what the definition of that is.
They mirror the fire apparatus requirement. Will that also throw the paved aspect of it out the window? Because fire apparatus doesn't require to be paved.
That's right.
Created just because of the fire apparatus acceptability.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because
Some of it does require it to be paved, right? You said it in some spots, it says paved. And some-
that's for arterial
Mhm.
apparatus and for where there is a hydrant. It's pavement width exclusive of shoulders. When Brent Reed, the gentleman that was here, the son of Tom Reed, asked Charlie Wallace if it had to be paved, he said, no, they accept unpaved roads, the widths as well for that. So, but Ronnie doesn't want an unpaved road. He wants all the roads to be paved and he wants a minimum of 24-foot wide. So it's still becoming muddy. Any thoughts?
Oh, you're looking at me?
Yeah.
Oh, but.
Can you just phrase it pertaining to road width requirements, not necessarily anything else that we require?
Well, that's what I was saying, but then you still have these major arterial and primary roads as determined by state or county road authorities.
Or less?
I don't know, because collector or secondary is 36 feet wide. I wanted to look up collector street, a street connecting minor residential streets to each other, to community facilities and to arterial streets serving primary neighborhood traffic and or a street so designed on the town master plan.
So I would say if you.
So I
went
would
to the
say
town
it's
of
like-
Corinth, it's 36 feet. Now, if they finish the road, I'll bet you, because you could park cars on each side and you could still drive safely down that road. Bet you that, because my street, Rose Avenue.
Palmer's you talking.
Yeah, Palmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rose Avenue is 24 feet paved with 2 feet shoulder on each side. I don't know where you've got my road smaller, but
So, so I'm confused. Why can't we just adopt that?
yeah, because it's off.
Adopt
I mean,
what?
What you just said?
In the fire, I don't know. I would,
Because again, I mean, I think that like a road like Palmer would make sense
Right.
for it to be bigger.
Because you're saying these don't require paved roads.
right. This chart, according to what I'm told by Brent Reed, and I would have to go back to Charlie Wallace and ask him. Let's see. Well, dead end fire apparatus roads in excess of 150 feet shall be provided with width and turnaround provisions in accordance with table 103.4. So we're back to, these are dead end roads for this table that's in here. This table is for dead end roads. Now, a general road. Let's see what it says.
What about a recommendation that says to go with the fire apparatus standards? With the pavement required, the shoulders have to be, there has to be 4 feet of total shoulder that doesn't have to be paid. You know what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say? I don't know how to word it.
4 foot of compacted shoulder.
Like even if it's a 36-foot wide road, 32 would have to be paved. If it's a 26-foot road, 22 would have to be paved, or 24, I'm sorry.
Right,
28-foot road, 24 would have to be paved.
26 foot.
Which I think
road.
that's what kind of what Ronnie wants,
That's the
24
bare
feet.
minimum,
Right.
yeah, for.
Then wouldn't this 26-foot road have to be a 30-foot wide road?
No, 24. 4 foot.
To go to that.
All right, hold on, let me read this. Tell me if this is what you're thinking. Change subdivision regulation, section 5.22, minimum pavement widths, last 4 columns, minor marginal access, cul-de-sac and alleys. To state that all streets shall be in accordance with the fire apparatus access road requirements from the New York State Building Codes at the time of the application. However, the town would require the roads to be paved to the widths recommended in the New York State fire apparatus requirements.
Did you read that one more time? I'm really sorry. I just want to absorb
No,
that.
yes, I can. All right, change subdivision, I should put. Change town
Numbers in there.
subdivision regulations, section 5.22. Minimum pavement widths, last 4 columns, minor marginal access, cul-de-sac and alleys. To state that all streets shall be in accordance with the fire apparatus access road requirements from the New York State Building Codes at the time of the application. However, the town would require the roads to be paved to the minimum widths recommended in the New York State fire apparatus requirements.
To the New York State fire apparatus, do they have a recommendation? In other words,
But but Ronnie wants them 24, and they're saying they would accept 20 foot, so then we're gonna have the conflict.
Well, Ronnie, they have to go to the town, take over the road, and if Ronnie says, if it's not 24, forget it, then that's what would
Or
happen.
we could put with the minimum being 24 foot. In that very last sentence. With minimum
Paved,
24 foot.
Yeah, for the minor
But it depends on the type of the road.
Right,
and cul-de-sac.
but you got alleys
It has to
and,
be that the shoulders.
Well, that's what's on that.
But this
chart.
this doesn't say anything in that chart about alleys.
In the
That's
chapter
this chart.
5 of the New York State
Yes.
Building and Equipment Design Features and Chapter Fire Service Features.
Yeah.
Which is not that appendix for fire apparatus roads. It says fire apparatus, shall be installed and arranged in accordance with sections, so on. Dimensions, fire apparatus roads shall have an unobstructed width of not less than 20 feet, exclusive of shoulders. So that's for there, and then for the dead end ones, it sends you to that other table. In that appendix, so.
We can still make that recommendation so that people can build the roads. Then it'll be up to the highway supervisor whether or not he approves the
Right.
town to actually take over the, or, you know.
Well, it's
his
the
rec-
town board. that-
Yeah, but his recommendation. Assuming
recommendation.
they would go with his recommendation.
Okay.
So we can still go off of the fire apparatus if I'm hearing that right.
My question.
Except
do we
that
need to
that's
put-
saying that they would take a 20-foot wide road, and you're asking for 24 and what Mary has written.
Well, we could say that we could take a 20-foot road and then we could also say we could approve it, yet we won't take it over.
We could, we'll
Is
approve
that-
it, but you need to go to the town. The highway superintendent.
Well, the
to
town board would have to take it over.
Approve it,
I mean, that's state law, you don't have to.
okay.
So we can go with we can still just model it off of this. And
We
then
have
it
to
would still
say-
just be up to the town board whether or not, so then the applicant could decide.
For each individual,
Yeah, they just have to go to the town board
what
to
if
make that.
these change, we need to put something in there that. If these change or that are.
That's why we said at the time of application.
Okay.
Hold on though, because as written, I don't know.
Right.
Shall be, okay, so
But do we need to change as this change? If
I
this
have to
changes?
take out shall if you're saying that all, or they. No, this works. No, this works.
Does the town board want all roads built to a standard, assuming that the possibility will take over in the future, that the HOA dissolves, they want it like a proactive measure? That was my perception of that.
That was my question, right? But if we did, he wants 24 with 2 foot.
What's the only road that's 20?
How does that work if an HOA dissolves, the town automatically has to take over the road?
There's been a lot of circumstantial compatibility with the park. Where there were HOAs and HOA dissolved, the road went under maintained, and the town took over. I don't know the legal process.
Yeah,
That's actually
More
pretty rare
taxes.
with an HOA because they're highly regulated. And any HOA that would start now in this era would have a default or it wouldn't go out of business. I mean, they used to, especially you hear stories of down in Florida 30 or 40 years ago. Lots of horror stories, but in New York State, my understanding is that's pretty rare. Now, I don't know if it's something, you know, Mary may have some input on this, if it's something that we didn't want to take any time.
I think we had HOAs here in town dissolve,
Yes.
Second Lake Community.
Yep.
Where's the other one that? I can find right now? We-
No,
we-
my neighborhood HOA dissolved and now.
So what
we're
happened
stuck
when
with
it dissolved?
roads that aren't,
What happened when it dissolved?
there's no top coat on our road and town won't come in and plow it. Or I mean, they plow it, they won't come in and blacktop it.
So I have a
So
question.
our road is literally falling apart.
At one time, we proposed that there be, when a subdivision is, a new subdivision is put in place, that they put in a new tax district to cover the stormwater drainage maintenance and stuff like that. Could that be considered, if they're in a new district, covers, you know, plowing the road and maintaining the stormwater? Then if we ever had to take over the road, that district tax rate could be adjusted to cover us taking over the road.
In that area.
That could
If
be a
it's an
condition.
HOA, I know we
don't
had
know the
discussed
answer to that.
making new districts for every new subdivision, creating a district to cover the additional needs for that community. With the new standards today, that community is gonna need more maintenance than this, you know, subdivision that was put in 50 years ago.
If you make a district for it right off the bat, though, it's a town district, so there's no HOA.
Right, no, I'm saying that. I'm saying,
Oh,
but if
oh,
they're, if
do a
it's put
special
in a
tax.
district and it's done, it's over with, then we have control. If we have to make changes within that subdivision, it's already in its own tax district. Just a thought. I know we talked about
I
it.
don't.
you think, you know?
I just don't, because what we have here is, there's some roads that would be 20. But if you're saying the town at a later date can decide whether or not to take ownership of the road. And I mean, that's a policy decision.
Can I ask you what Chair Karen, minimum curb radius is, says that's 20 feet. What does that mean?
Where, what are you looking at?
On page 46.
Yeah.
Section 5.2, as you're going down to the minimum grade, it says minimum curb 20 feet.
We pause for a minute, to change it.
Sure, she's looking up minimum curb.
I don't know, John. This is why
It is all Howard's fault.
on these major subdivisions, we've been referring them to the town engineer to check. They have our regulations and they go through them and they check to see. All right, hold on. Chris wants us to stop for a minute. Okay, but when he gets ready, we'll start up again.
Page 9.
Should I go by the mic?
Yeah.
Can I?
If you want to come, you want to come down here?
You'll officially be on the board next month. I mean, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's not here next month?
I'm not, Barb's not.
The end of January.
Okay, but Dane is done, well, and so we have two alternates. We're gonna,
What date?
Right now it's the 24th.
like, I'm just gonna start it.
Guess you won't be sitting at my right hand side.
Sorry, I'll be
That's it.
I'll be in Spain.
Right, those are Vegas.
Yeah, rolling tape, everybody.
All right.
Okay, so what?
Okay, so John, you had a question, the minimum curve radii?
Yeah,
That's essentially just the radius of the curve. If you're driving your car and taking a right-hand turn, the minimum radius is 20 foot. For a minor road or 30 foot for a major road, assuming that those have different speed limits. So it's just how tight of a corner can a normal car
okay.
take?
So it has nothing to do with the road width.
No. So that would be, if you look at the fire apparatus roads diagrams, that 96 foot diameter cul-de-sac, the 28 foot are typical note. That's saying that tight corner would at a minimum be 28 feet of a radius.
Gotcha.
One thing I want to point out was that the subdivision plans that have the cul-de-sac, I think their radius is smaller than this 96 foot diameter by,
The ones they just gave us tonight?
yeah, not by a lot, but I think they had 46 foot instead of
Well, they went under
48 feet,
24,
so it would be 92 foot diameter instead of 96 diameter.
Yeah,
So I
they
don't know if
decided to go 22 instead of the original 24, that's why. They lowered it.
And then I don't know, Karen, if you guys or if the planning board ended up approving 24 foot wide, would it just get immediately kicked back by the county saying that it has to be at least 26 foot wide? Would that be something?
That was without shoulder or 24 paved. But the county doesn't, correct me if I'm wrong, require it to be paved. So it's actually a
Oh, right, it's
28 foot road.
46. I was
Okay,
looking
so,
for
okay,
it.
all right.
Took me a minute to find it. So that is only 92.
Yeah,
And it's supposed to be 96, so that's a change right there that would need to be made.
I would think so.
Is that,
With or without shoulder.
that's at the cul-de-sac?
That's the,
That's the
in the
cul-de-sac's
cul-de-sac,
radius.
yes.
Wonder if they changed that, because I remember at the town board meeting, they were talking about that 96 and they asked them to do a spin with the fire truck to see
Yeah.
what it was, and it
they
was like
did-
65 or something.
It was 70.
70, yeah. I just remember it being considerably less than. Yeah,
But again, in that,
I think that again takes into account if there's cars parked
Yeah.
on the side of the road of the cul-de-sac, can it still make the?
Yeah, so that
spin?
would actually work out. If there were cars parked on both, yeah, both ends perfectly.
and this next page in that fire apparatus one, not the diagram page, but that chart calls for a 96 foot diameter cul-de-sac. And you're right, it's only designed at 92.
Is that for an aerial apparatus? Because those are.
No, this is,
Just any
this is
fire
dead end
apparatus.
fire apparatus access.
We don't have a aerial yet, but apparently, the amount of 3-story dwelling dictates the need for that. We need one, but we can't afford one right now, so it's to be coming down the pipeline.
Yeah.
I need to circle this in here. I got it.
Are we ready?
So I'm gonna read this because I think then someone's gonna make a mistake. I will read it very slowly.
Hold on. Mary's gonna read a resolution
Okay.
and somebody will make a motion, maybe.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, so the resolution would be to change the town subdivision regulations, section 5.22. Minimum pavement widths, just the last 4 columns, minor, marginal access cul-de-sac alleys to state that all streets shall be in accordance with the fire apparatus access road requirements from the New York State building codes at the time the application is made. However, the town would require the roads to be paved to the widths recommended in the New York State fire apparatus requirements, subject to approval by the town's engineer.
Wait a minute.
You told me New York State.
It is, that's not what I'm questioning. With the the fire apparatus access road is an appendix to the fire code of New York State, so it needs to be in accordance with the
Appendix
20,
D.
not Appendix D. Fire apparatus roads need to be in accordance with the 2020 Fire Code of New York State. That will send you to that appendix. Eventually,
What if they change 2020 though?
or whatever is in place. So whatever, make it the Fire Code of New York State with no date on it, whatever is in effect at the time of the submission of the subdivision. I'm afraid if you make it,
I just,
Fire Code of New York State. It sends you to appendix D.
Oh.
should I put section?
Marginal access cul-de-sac and L.
Why are we excluding that?
There's only one other column. This is the 36-foot road. Which is the collector secondary road. That's like the main drag, like Palmer Avenue. We're excluding that.
So we would still require it to be 30.
Oh, yeah.
That's what that, okay.
We don't have a road like that.
Well,
Right. I was trying to, my bracket.
That would only, I mean, also road, that was the road that doesn't have. 600. Have it parking too.
I think I just come back.
I think they built that road because IP used to be there.
Yes.
Do you want, subject to approval by the town?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, ready?
We're ready.
Okay. All right, change the town's subdivision regulations, section 5.22. Minimum pavement widths, only the last four columns, minor marginal access cul-de-sac alleys. To state that all streets shall be in accordance with the fire apparatus access road, section 503 requirements from the Fire Code of New York State at the time of the application. However, the town would require the roads to be paved to the widths recommended in the Fire Code of New York State. This recommendation is subject to approval by the town's engineer.
I make that motion.
Second. Okay, roll call vote, John?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Scott? Yes. Tony?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Hearing none, the vote carries.
Yay.
So this is going to go to the board.
Yep.
Their next meeting,
You're not
which
at work
is
this week.
January 8th.
Board meeting is Tuesday.
Okay. Good.
We need
Yeah,
to
of
change
course
the
you
next month meeting. You guys can all be here. Marvin and I was not there. And James, you're automatically down one.
I'm pretty sure if it's 24th, that's Wednesday, I'm pretty sure. That wouldn't have it the week earlier.
Well, before
See
we,
what everybody else thinks.
I could come.
Karen just left.
17.
Karen just left. The problem is, do you have to have a certain amount of time between your meetings? Because they want to have it like, not 28 days, but only 21 days.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I mean, I've never heard that.
okay, no, I don't know. I just don't want to say, let's change it to next week, but,
It would only affect it if you were having a public hearing or something that you needed to notice.
all right. So I'll just make sure till Karen comes in, we'll. Some of our board can't make it on the 24th. And. So the dates we could possibly change it to are the 17th or the 31st.
Sorry. 17th works really well. Did that look 17th, anybody?
Yeah, I am.
How about you, Josh?
I'm looking.
I gotta have surgery on my brain. No.
You guys.
Okay,
I'm not gonna be here 17th.
Okay, so 1.
Karen. There's been some, I have to ask you a question. Some of the board members can't make it on the 24th. Can we change it earlier than the 24th? I know we can change it later because there's a
Where we
31st
don't have anything
for public hearing.
that's, gotta meet a 30-day or a 32-day time frame going on. So I think you can make it.
Okay, but I just didn't want to change it if it's not, if it has to be 28 days or something or
I
whatever.
think we're good. The other thing is you need to leave open that public hearing on the Evergreen Estates. We didn't do that. Or did you do it?
I did it first thing, right?
Aaron, are you good on the 17th?
How about Mary?
Yeah, I'm fine.
January, we're talking January?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe I have anything going.
Howard would be the only one that's not available.
That's available on the 17th.
We do have a,
So we have,
Yeah.
so somebody would have to make a motion.
I will make a motion that we change our next meeting to January 17th from January 24th.
I'm gonna second that.
4.
Second.
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Yes.
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 Website, town board. What time is that?
Any other old or new business? Josh?
Curious why Lake George got $10 million for their down.
I saw that.
That was my
For
first.
William
thought,
Henry.
$10 million for downtown revitalization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
$10 million. What, didn't it say also part of Fort William Henry too? They
think
just got a
Cambridge
bunch
got
of
some
money for
money,
their,
10 million.
winter dreams, whatever.
For it.
Nobody has any new, old or new business? Okay. We want to stop. I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Bye.